I would make the argument that I do not believe that anyone covering college football does so better than this man because of his historical knowledge of the roots of what college football is, his passion and love for it. Spencer Hall, full cast after dark with Meadowlark Media is something he does college football weekends after the games have been played on Saturday. Shutdown full cast is what he does with Holly Anderson more regularly. Thank you, Spencer, for joining us. We were having a conversation, as Stugotz is wont to do, about Alabama in a game that Alabama was not playing in. And I just ask you in general, as we start, your thoughts on everything that happened last night, everything we witnessed.
Well, the most glaring thing is this, that it probably would have been cool to have this conversation yesterday when this was an interesting story, as opposed to today where we're just looking at roadkill and the big truck that is Georgia steaming away into the distance. I don't think this changes a lot about what we know they're capable of in the moment. You do have to frame it this way, though. Repeating is very, very, very difficult. It's something a lot of good teams have failed to do. They didn't. When they were faced with the best chance to do it, they took it, and they absolutely nailed it. It was a laugher by the first quarter. I know some people will say, it was over by halftime. You can bump that up. It was over way sooner. It works. The formula now is pretty simple, and it's what it's always been, which is that if you stack talent deep enough and you don't mess it up, get out of the way, find a decent quarterback, you're going to win, and you will continue to win in dominant, sometimes embarrassing and lopsided fashion.
Greg Cody has made the argument that TCU will not recover from that. I'd make the argument that the season that they had will be good for recruiting, and they had no business being there in the first place. Where do you stand?
Recovery is a subjective term given their goals. What TCU wants to do is they want to go ahead and compete and or win the Big 12, which, by the way, that's unfinished business. They didn't do that this year. Let's not overlook that, yes, we did not ding them for making their championship game, their conference championship game, but they didn't win the Big 12. So winning their conference is still on the board as a goal. So, whether they'll recover physically, I agree with Greg. It's going to take them about 2 weeks. It's going to hurt. Because those boys took a whooping.
They did.
Those dudes are going to be very, 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 very sore, because I know the other magical ingredient of the Georgia equation is this. They hit real hard, and they do it the entire game. I don't know if you counted them up like I did, but by my count, 23 different players made tackles for the Georgia defense. 23. They emptied the bench, the locker room, probably pulled a couple dudes out of the stands, and all of them were bruising people. So whether they'll recover, I think they'll be fine. They weren't supposed to be here in the first place. It's a fluke. Nationally, do they matter? No. I mean, honestly, that's not what we're talking about here. TCU is seeking to be a Texas power, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to be successful within context. That's what they're trying to do. And if they get a national spot or a bump, that's fine. Realistically, there's only 5 to 10 teams that are true national teams in terms of recruiting and talent in college football. They ain't one of them, all right? If they manage to class up, bump up, catch a wave, and do this again, cool. But that's not what Sonny Dykes is aiming for. That's not what anyone in the administration is aiming for. Happy to be there. Sad that it happened. On to next year. That's TCU.
But Spencer, TCU after the game did acknowledge that Georgia is just at a higher tier, just a better team, a far more talented team. And how could you not after that game? But if that's the place college football is in, then there's one tier. It's Georgia and Alabama, right?
It's Georgia and Alabama, with Georgia obviously, I think, having the edge right now. Ohio State is right there, and I think evidently you can't help but say that too. Ohio State was one timeout away, I think, from winning that game. If you'll know, they had a fake punt call. It was going to work. It worked on the actual play, which did not count because a timeout was called before then. If you have a receiver who can get open and an offensive line who could buy some time, you're going to give Georgia a run for their money. That's still the plan. Talent meets talent. That's how you beat a team like Georgia. They're not impossible to beat. They don't do anything that's excessively brilliant. Todd Monken had a great game plan last night, but on the whole, they beat you head-to-head. So you need to have the right collection of heads to meet them. Ohio State can do that. Alabama can do that. And that's really about it, with a tier of sort of like Michigan, USC, Maybe a couple of SEC teams like maybe Tennessee. If you project forward, maybe Miami and Florida State have that. Florida might be on the come up in like 2 years, but honestly, that's a 3 or 4 year project. It's a small club at this point.
Let me ask you a couple of Ohio State questions. Marvin Harrison Jr. is the best college receiver I have seen since blank.
Since Jamar Chase. Since Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson at LSU. And when we talk about like all-time teams, by the way, which is one of my favorite things to do, I love it. You'll never solve the problem. You'll never have a conclusive answer. People could just BS about it for days and get real irate about it. Also, it does my favorite thing, which is remembering some guys. I love remembering some guys. Shouts out to David Roth for the OG concept there. That 2019 team is still, to me, the best offensive collection of talent I've ever seen in college football. So Marvin Harrison Jr., by the way, has nothing left to prove. He's an incredible receiver. He runs routes better than some pros. He's strong. He's fast. He is our friend. Like, that is the dude you want to watch play football for the next 10 years.
Why are you making LSU only the best offense ever? I thought that was the best team I've ever seen, period.
It is a team sport, Dan. I'm glad you pointed that out. You need 22 of them and special teams. But they're the best collection of offensive talent because defensively they had a hard assignment, right? Your job there was to get turnovers because you're going to be on the field so many more times than your compatriots, your comparison, your peers, because you're going to be out there after the offense scores yet another touchdown. So you always have to take that into context. It's very hard for me to say defensively that they're better than, say, your 11 or 12 Alabama teams, whether they're better than last year's Georgia team. Last year's Georgia team, to me, was the best defensive unit I've ever seen in college football. And I'm all in favor of doing this, by the way. Don't wait to say best ever. I think, like, if you look at the way the NFL evaluates, history and a lot of their fans, they will go back and go, well, no team's ever going to be the 85 Bears. Let's be real. The 85 Bears would get waxed by half of the offenses in the NFL today because the dudes are literally bigger. They are bigger. They are faster. They run more schemes. They're smarter. They've done more film work. They're supplemented to the gills, right? 85 Bears didn't have creatine, right? They were working off
85 Bears had the fridge at about 320 doing commercials because he was 40 pounds heavier than everyone else. Now everyone in the sport, Justin Jefferson is 320.
I will not allow this. Show some respect to the monsters of the Midway. Are you telling me that Sam Darnold and the Carolina Panthers would tear that defense apart?
Go ahead and grab from the bottom of the garbage can there to start the comparison. I appreciate that. Hold up a banana peel and be like, is this your man? No, I am not going to say Sam Darnold could do that. That's absolutely absurd. Am I saying Aaron Rodgers would run them through with a barely 500 Packers team? Honestly, yeah. With that release time?
I'll say it. The offense of the Carolina Panthers, 35 years after the Bears. Go look at the weights of those people involved. The Carolina.
Look at Mike Singletary's eyes. I mean,
C.J. Stroud's performance in that game that was the almost game is the best quarterbacking performance I have seen since blank.
Oh boy. Anyone of Hendon Hooker's this year? Because Hendon Hooker was outstanding on multiple occasions for the Tennessee Volunteers. Honestly, Max Duggan, I know that we're currently down on Max Duggan because he spent last night getting pile drived over and over again by no fewer than 20 different guys. But Max Duggan against Kansas State was astonishing in a different way than C.J. Stroud. C.J. Stroud was technically near perfect against the Georgia Bulldogs. So I would say going back maybe, Hendon Hooker versus Alabama. That was the other game this year that I thought somebody had played up to their maximum potential under very difficult circumstances. If you want to know who had the most fun this year, we don't tend to discuss that, right? But the two most fun teams to watch, TCU, because they just pulled off crap every week that they had no right pulling off, which is great. I support that. All teams should do that. And two, Tennessee. Tennessee was a blast to watch the entire year. Like, even when they face planted against Georgia, they were still taking big swings.
Tennessee beat Alabama, and Stugotz, very casually watching the sport this year, just says put Alabama in all of the important games. Alabama wasn't that good this year, but if they'd been in that game last night, it would have been different than that. So when Stugotz and Greg Cody argue on behalf of, can we just make the final game Georgia-Alabama next year? Just at the end, no matter what happens, you'd say right. What to that?
Well, it would be better than TCU. I feel like I'm on solid ground saying that they would be more competitive than your average Big 12 team. But Spencer, Texas almost beat Alabama this year, the team that you want in the final. Yeah, that's true. It wasn't with a month to prepare. It wasn't with a month to recover. It wasn't for all of the stakes and monies. So you could go ahead and you could plug Georgia and Alabama in there every year, but I like the random moonshots. I like a little bit of the what the hellness to our matchups. I'm totally fine with all of this happening because I have a memory longer than 3 days. Sometimes it stretches to like a week. I was fond of watching Michigan and Michigan lose to TCU. I thought that was entertaining as hell. I love that. You need to look at like the playoff as a whole and say we had 2/3 of the product was outstanding. 2/3 of it was amazing. And then kind of like WrestleMania, the final didn't deliver, right? I love the undercard though. And the undercard's most of what you're watching. So I'll take it.
I want the main event to be better. How long do you think it's going to take Deion Sanders to turn Colorado into a national powerhouse?
That would take a while. How long is it going to take him to get a better job out of it? 2 years.
And what's the better job going to be?
Pretty much anything. That's a terrible gig. That's an awful gig. Like if he went from Colorado to Oregon State, that's probably an upgrade at this point. He's looking for bigger fish, though.
Spencer, if he waited, would he have gotten a better job? Meaning Harbaugh goes, he leaves, someone else goes and slides into the Michigan job. Would Deion have gotten a better job?
How dare you say that? God told him to go get that job, Stugotz. So who am I to argue with God?
You're
Deion
right.
Sanders, God, who has a personal line directed straight to him.
Amen.
You think that Deion Sanders making that kind of money, it's an argument that I have had with Mike Ryan. He says that that amount of money is a huge amount of money for an unproven coach. I say, given what is changing in that sport, given what the television dollars are, given that he is in the commercials with Saban, and given that he gives your program instant flash, I would say you can't even pay him enough, that he's better than all of these other guys just in name recognition and selling you tickets before you've even started.
Well, first, let's back up and say this. He has to get paid first, and Colorado, in the opening press conference, by its own admission, did not have the money to pay him. That was money en route. It was going to happen. So let's hope he gets paid for that, just on the behalf of all workers who have contracts. The second thing is this, that I agree that you could pay him whatever because the floor is so low at Colorado, and the ceiling is TBD. So if they have any kind of success, if we get Colorado on the map at all, then that's going to pay off for them in ways well and beyond the football field. I mean, there are insane but accurate studies that show that if you're successful in football, your enrollment numbers, your application numbers, they go up. That's a fact. And as weird as that is, the University of Colorado and their athletics department, they know that this will work, and they know that Deion will get talent. Like, we're talking about talent, right? Y'all are in Miami, and the one thing that's keeping Miami fans alive is the fact that despite what happens on the field, Mario Cristobal just keeps putting them in the grocery cart and keeps bringing in 4 and 5 stars, right? What's going to happen to them afterwards, that is a question of some conjecture. I'll let y'all have that. I personally think he likes to take, prime rib and turn it into hamburger. That's what you get with the Mario Cristobal experience, right? We got some filet mignon. Cool. You're getting hamburgers. That's what we're getting.
You may have just answered my question in saying that, but in the portal era and with the way Mario recruits, if it isn't Miami, who is the program poised to sort of make a fast track into that Alabama-Georgia echelon?
Well, very few. There are some guys who are currently lagging a little bit. I feel like Clemson could compete with them if they had a quarterback and a couple of different skilled players, but they've been sort of allergic to offensive football lately, the kind that you need in order to score points and keep up with Alabama, and even with Georgia, who now they've apparently figured out the offensive challenges that plagued Kirby Smart in the first 3 or 4 years of his reign, thanks to the blessings of a junior college quarterback whose only other offers were like Middle Tennessee State and Jones College. Like sometimes the sport works that way. Other teams, usual suspects. If USC actually got their defense in line and recruited really well, USC sits in the middle of, one of our nation's 2 largest cities, and they are effectively the only show in town when it comes to college football. Pardon to UCLA. They'll always sort of be a second banana to whatever USC is putting on the field and whatever they're recruiting. So they're possible. I don't feel like Texas is ever there just because, I don't know, Austin makes people chill. I have no good theory as to why Texas isn't a superpower, right? Other than this, Austin makes people too relaxed. It's too nice.
Arch Manning's about to make them a superpower, is he not?
No.
Why?
No. Like Arch. Look at who Arch Manning played in high school, right? Anybody who says that Arch Manning is college ready, I think is doing a disservice to anybody who's actually done all of the prep work playing in like big high school conferences. And in places where there's real competition. Like, who was ready? Kyler Murray. Go look where Kyler Murray played high school. Kyler Murray was effectively playing in the Sun Belt in high school, right? He came into college football totally ready because he was playing in those high school stadiums that, seat like 15,000 and weight rooms, which rival anything that you would see in the Big 12. Arch Manning needs time. That's not a diss, by the way. He needs time, and he needs time to develop, because the first time he goes out there and sees how big and fast everybody is, it'll be real scary.
Spencer, thank you for being on with us. Again, a reminder to the audience, they're wildly popular podcasts. They're tangentially about college football, but the college football there, the analysis with Holly Anderson is also excellent. Shutdown Fullcast and Fullcast After Dark. Thank you, sir. We will talk to you soon.
Thanks, y'all.